Welcome, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Designed to Win. I am so glad that you are here with me today. I am actually on video this week. I haven't been doing that a lot, but I am starting to do more of the actual videos where you can see me and relate to me a little bit better that way. Thank you for those of you that have been supporting me and listening to this podcast and sharing it just from hearing my voice every week. So if you want to see the actual video, you can go to YouTube where I post all of my videos every week on YouTube. So with that being said, last week I shared a story about a little patch in my backyard. That has honestly frustrated me for years. Every spring I plant it with seeds and dig it up and plant it and water it and all that kind of stuff. And it is it doesn't grow. The grass doesn't grow. So I talked about that. Every year it stays the same. And I shared all this story with you, and you can go back and listen to the episode from last week where I talked more about it. But in talking about this, I really thought that God was through talking to me about this barren patch in my backyard, but evidently he wasn't. And as I was mowing my yard this week and looking at that patch in my backyard, God just kept talking to me about it. And I found myself thinking about what he was really trying to show me about this patch. And I realized that the lesson isn't really about the surface and what I talked about being underneath the surface of the dirt. It's really about the waiting. It's about waiting on God. And if I'm honest, this has been one of those seasons for me about waiting on God. It has been a very long season, let me just tell you. I've been building this ministry that God has called me to build for a while now, that He's placed in my heart. I have been recording my podcast, and I have written books, and I've created a planner that came from all the years of experience of teaching school, and God just gave me this aha moment about it and putting it together and now working on this resource guide and just learning all the things to do with that. So just trying to create the resources and I pray that all the things that God has given me to do, He's going to use to help the students and the parents and educators and anyone else who's listening to my podcast. My somebody's out there that God has for me. But in all of this that I have worked on and I create and I do and I'm working towards and I'm stepping into, I just have to stop and wonder sometimes and say, okay, Lord, when am I going to see the fruit from all this? Wondering how many of you have asked that question. Like, maybe you've been praying for a healing, or you have been believing for a child that's lost, or maybe you've been trying to rebuild from a loss, just like I have. Or maybe you're starting a business like me and following your dream that God has placed in your heart, and you've been working on it for years, and you have prayed and you have worked and you have stayed faithful, but all you can see is the dirt. It's just the dirt. You don't see any growth. You don't see anything coming up out of the ground. You don't see the fruit yet. Well, that's exactly where I have found myself this week. Yep, I found myself going, okay, Lord. And God had to gently remind me about something. That if I stop watering that little patch in my backyard, which I mentioned in my episode last week, that there's been times I was very discouraged and I'm like, I'm not even going to bother anymore. I'm just going to quit. It's not doing any good. I'm just going to leave it. But if you stop watering, there's not going to be any growth. You're not guaranteed that there's going to be any growth at all if you just stop. If you stop doing what you're doing and moving toward what you're doing, then you just cut it off altogether. There's no nurturing it. There's no watering it. There's no encouraging it. So I wonder how many of you, how many dreams have stopped because you stopped watering them, because you got discouraged? How many prayers have I quietly stopped because I felt like I was not seeing something immediate? And I can tell you that I did that for a long time, on and off and on and off. I would pray and pray and pray and expect an immediate thing to happen, and it didn't happen. So I just got discouraged and was like, okay, Lord, well, you're really not there. You really don't care. You really don't want that to happen in my life. So, how many times have any of you out there done that? I think maybe there's probably more than just me out there that has done that. I think many of us have to think about what we do when we're in that place. Are we still believing in God? Are we giving up on God? Are we going to let Him lead us through this time and be patient and keep watering and keep waiting? Or are we going to give up? Well, one of my scriptures for this podcast is Galatians 6:9, and I'm going to share that with you because I have it on my wall in my office, and it says, "Let us not grow weary in good doing." Some people say well doing, but and then it says, "For at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up." And I love those words. At the proper time. We tend to forget about that part of it. Not on my time and not on your time. It says at the proper time. So, in other words, it's in God's timing. And I realized this week that maybe I've been so focused on seeing the fruit that I have forgotten how important it is to simply keep watering. Oh my gosh, at times it's so hard, but we've got to keep praying and keep learning and keep just trusting in God and showing up for Him, because He shows up for us every day. So we've got to keep showing up for Him no matter how discouraged we are, how frustrated we are, because every single one of those things that we do, the praying and the learning and the trusting and the showing up, is God's way of cultivating that soil that He needs to cultivate for things to grow. So He was showing me that because that barren land needs to be cultivated a little bit more. And as I thought about all of this in my life, I realized something. People might see the podcast and they might see my planner and they may see my book. And eventually, all the people that have seen it, they'll share it with somebody else. And all the years that I have taught and all the things that I've walked through in my life, the years of learning and the years of raising my kids and the years of wondering if anything was ever mattering, anything that I did. None of that time that I have spent over all the years and all the things I've walked through and all the waiting and all the learning and the growing and the praying, none of it's wasted, because God was taking that time to cultivate the soil. I think that's something we all need to remember. Healthy soil doesn't happen by accident. It has to be cared for. If you're a gardener out there, you certainly understand this. Soil has to be cared for. It needs water, it needs nutrients, it needs to have the weeds removed out of it and rocks moved out of it, all those things. Sometimes it just needs the hard ground broken up and broken apart so things can grow. And our hearts, excuse me, our hearts are the same way. What are we feeding our hearts? Are we spending time with God's word? Are we making time to pray? Are we surrounding ourselves with people who will encourage us in our faith? Are we allowing God to remove fear or discouragement or comparison, bitterness or unforgiveness in our life? Those are all things that, if we let God remove some of that stuff out of our life, it cultivates a healthy soil in our life. And a healthy soil will eventually produce healthy fruit. And one thing God has really been reminding me of this week is that I don't want this ministry that I've been working on to grow just so it can be successful. That was never my goal, never my intention, never my want, never my desire. I want to grow it because I want to see people's lives changed. And the things that God has blessed me in that I have gotten to do, like working with the homeless shelter and just all the amazing people that I got to touch their lives, to just pour something into their life. Or all the other things that I have been doing where I have created a planner, I've worked with students to help them and tutor them with executive skills, or, giving parents some hope that their kids are going to be able to learn and grow and do all those things that they need to in life, in the education system, just having the right tools and the right person to understand and the right person to listen and encourage them. I want people who feel stuck to know that there's a way forward. That's why I just keep doing what I'm doing, and I keep watering even when I get frustrated, even when I feel in that place. It's not for me, it's for the people that God has for me to pour into their life. My somebody's out there. But maybe that's where you are today. Maybe that's where you've been, that you are tired and you're discouraged. And you're wondering if anything is ever going to change. And trust me, I have been there many, many times in my life. And life really is about change. It's just not always when we want it. But can I encourage you in something today? Please don't stop watering where you need to in your life. Please don't stop praying, and don't stop believing, and don't stop showing up for yourself and for your somebody's out there. Don't stop showing up for God. Because just because we can't see the growth doesn't mean that God isn't growing something beneath the surface. One day, you'll look back and realize that while you were waiting, God was growing roots strong enough to support the harvest that He has planned all along. And usually the harvest is way bigger than we could ever imagine. So I hope that this has touched some of you today. And I thank you so much for joining me today. I always love being here with you every week. And before I go this week, I want to share something with you that earlier this week, I launched a new episode, a new podcast segment, and it's called Conversations with God. And I talk about God and I talk about my faith on this episode, but this segment is basically about answering questions that people have about God. And how do we have conversations with God? How do we know what God's saying about something? I have had so many people over the years ask me questions about the Bible. And does it say this in the Bible? And what does God say about that? And I just thought this might be the easiest way to start having those conversations with people and with you, my listeners, and maybe somebody that you might know that has questions that have never been asked. So every Wednesday, I'll be sharing shorter conversations while we explore just honest questions about faith, about scripture, about purpose, about grief, relationships, just everyday life stuff that we want to know. How does that pertain to the Bible? How does God fit into all that? So if you have a question and you about God or the Bible, I would so love to answer that and talk about that on that segment. So please, you can send me it in the comments on my YouTube channel or on my website or on my podcast, and I will be happy to put that on those segments and just see what God has to say about those things. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for being with me this week, and be blessed. Have an amazing weekend. Until next time, keep smiling. Love you.